So let's get to it. So I like to kick off these interviews with an off the wall question, which is like, it gives us a looking glass, a spyglass into who Ryan Graham is. And the question is, if there was a theme song to your life, what's the theme song?
See, I'm a huge music fan and I have a gargantuan library of music.
Yep.
You didn't prepare me for this question. So now I'm like spinning here. Like what song would that be? There's so many to choose from. It wouldn't be a single song. I'd make you listen to Dark Side of the Moon in its entirety.
Oh, the whole thing?
Start to finish.
I got to watch The Wizard of Oz. That tells me a little bit about you. We won't go there. All right. So here's the thing. I'd love it if you just introduce yourself. Let us know who Ryan Graham is. Tell us a little bit about who you are, and then we're going to break down your journey of kind of how you became who you are today as we sit here on this call.
Yeah. I don't know. Let's see. I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia. I was born in East Point. I grew up in Peachtree City, Georgia. So I'm a Southern man. I was talking with somebody this morning. That means that when it gets below 50, I get pretty grumpy, which is today. I went to school at Georgia Tech in the late 90s. It was 96 to 2000. I got a degree in civil engineering. So that tells you about how my brain is kind of wired up. But I realized after 3 years as a consultant, that wasn't for me. While I was at school, I took an elective in real estate because I was interested in it. I didn't know why, but I did get my real estate license, and it'll be 19 years in February that I've been practicing real estate full time. And I love this business. I worked for a mom and pop boutique, started my own brokerage, joined KW in 2012, started the Graham Seavey Group. We went on to be the #1 team in the Southeast region for a few years. And then in 19 started my current team, Community Council, and we just finished the year at 51.5 million, which was super exciting. 23 million the previous year and 10 million our first year. So we've been on a great growth trajectory, and that's me, I guess, in a business nutshell.
So let's break that down a little bit. So 19 years in the business. What did it look like 19 years ago?
It was a young man in his late 20s, single, having fun, slinging houses. That would have been, 2003, 4, 5. And then, you had lenders rolling around in Mercedes S500s and Rolex watches. And I'm not joking, they were paying for everything. And then, that's right about the time, I guess 06, 07, I felt like I knew what I was doing. I became a broker, started my own firm, and then the music stopped.
Yeah. So real estate pre-2007 recession looked drastically different than it does today, right? And the way the industry interacted with each other is a little bit like what you were talking about, right? Like money just to a consumer was really easy to get, but it was also pretty easy. People threw a lot of money to the real estate agent to help them with their business, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And then the recession hit. Then what?
My golf game improved significantly.
Yeah, there you go.
We had to pivot, right? I didn't even know what pivot, that wasn't a word in my vocabulary. Gary taught me that word, taught all of us that word, right? But we had to figure out how to do things a little bit different. I didn't get into the REO or foreclosure business. I wasn't really privy to that at the time. Again, when I say I was an independent broker, I was the CEO and the janitor and everybody between. That was me. But I held close to my clients. I maintained my sphere-based business, did okay, survived. I will say a little bit of insight on me. During that time, things got real thin, real lean for me and my wife. I valeted cars. I did that in college. I went out just to make sure that we continue to make ends meet. I was valeting cars at Rathbun Steakhouse for about 6 months. So that's the times that we were in. It was hard to represent sellers because they were underwater by 6 figures in many cases. I had a couple of clients bring 5-figure checks to the table to get a house sold. Buyers, even if you were putting down 20 or 30%, or even I had some buyers putting down 40%, their loans were so scrutinized. Underwriting was very difficult. Money was scarce. Values had declined significantly. Their equity was non-existent. It was not easy to sell real estate at that time.
Yeah. I actually think that says a little bit about who you are as a person when talking about the valet and cars, because what it tells me is you're somebody that's going to do whatever it takes, right? And my guess is in life at that moment, the Ryan I would have met said, "Hey, I'm not super crushing it, but I'm going to go do what it takes for my family or to make life thrive." My guess is that principle shows up in your business today, does it not?
I think so.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I don't think I'm a workaholic, and I don't think I am, but because, well, one of my resolutions is, and I try not to use the word balance, finding balance in life, because, I don't think they're quite the right approach, but that's the word, right? Finding balance. And so I think I do a decent job of that, of creating some boundaries and knowing like when I need to focus on time. I think if anything during the pandemic, that's what I lost, when we were, all at our dining room tables with our laptops and our Zoom. And I have two small kids running around in homeschool, and, my wife works with me at the company, and it just, were no boundaries at all. And so kind of creating more boundaries where, okay, time with the boys is time with the boys, time with my wife is time with my wife, and time with the team and the company and the business is time with the team and the business. So, you were asking what I recognize when things need to be done, when things have to be done. You double down, you work 12, 14 hours a day, and you try to make sure you're attaching that to a purpose, to a specific goal, like this needs to happen. I joked a lot with people when we started Community Council that I had learned so much doing the Graham CB group, joining Keller Williams, the millionaire real estate agent model. Like, it's just the fire hose of information from family reunion and mega camp and getting involved with Gary's mastermind group. But I had, a 6-year run to build and implement that stuff. With CNC, I wanted to launch all of that in 6 months, which wasn't a realistic goal, right? But I pull up the bootstraps and just go and make it happen. And plus, we started CNC in 19, and then, February of 20 came along and the music stopped in a different way.
Where's the mask, right? Yeah.
Right. Put the mask on, so you have to show up. You have to show up in those moments, for leadership, for your clients, for your business, and you do what you got to do to make sure things keep moving.
Ryan, I appreciate you saying that. And I definitely think that's an integrity thing, as speaks to who you are. But I don't think everybody carries that trait sometimes. And I think it's what I'd like to pull out of this interview for us that had the opportunity to sit here and listen to you is, what are those little nuggets that bring a success to Ryan? And I'm actually going to go out and say that I think that might be a little bit of one of your success nuggets is you do what it takes. It's not that you're going to go be a rock star 24/7, but the moments when you need to turn it on or give it the extra effort, and you plow forward, right?
Yeah. So the Matrix movie came out, the fourth one, and I haven't seen it yet.
I haven't seen it yet.
Right. But that first one, I loved it when it first came out, and it was a long time ago. Right. But there's that Latin quote, and it's "Know thyself," is what the Oracle is talking about, for those of you following with me here. Yeah. But I love that quote, like, know thyself. I think it's so incredibly important to be in touch with who you are and what makes you happy and what fuels your fire. I mean, we talk about in our business, you need to find a why. And that is very, very important. And we talk at our team a lot about understanding your why and all that kind of stuff. Beneath that, though, is you got to know who you are. You got to know what makes you happy, what fulfills you, what you get excited about, what gives you relief and release and relaxation. You've got to honor all of that stuff immensely, because if you don't, this business is full of people who've burned out and failed, or succeeded and burned out and just they're grumpy. You got it. It's an energy bus that we ride all the time. And that's probably not unique. It's definitely not unique to real estate. It's definitely runs through the entrepreneurial mindset everywhere. Finding that balance again, boundaries and balance. For me, going back to the dark side of the moon, like I like to listen to music. I like to play music. It's hard with little kids and everything that I've got going on, but just if it's 30 minutes a week or an hour a week, I can put on some headphones or turn up my speakers and just kind of like honor that in myself for a minute, just to give that recharge moment. I know it sounds silly, but for me, that's what works. And I think that's what everybody needs to look deep inside of like, why am I doing this in the first place? Like, what is the point of, let's get philosophical, like life, everything, right? it's very easy in our sales driven business, working with clients, or if we're building a team or building some type of business, to just get into a grind. And if you wake up 10 or 15 years from now and you didn't really do anything else along the way other than make money, I don't think you're going to be real happy with where you've found yourself.
Yeah. I want to ask you how you learned that. And while you're thinking about how you'd answer that, I'd like to just make mention, like, we talk a lot in our company about this concept of quantum leap, right? And it's not just go sell a bunch of houses and make a lot of money. There's this whole thing called life that goes on at the same time. And if you lose perspective around that, it can go south really quickly in this industry. But how did you learn it?
Trial and error. Okay. By doing it wrong a bunch, by, waking up some days and realizing I'm not the best version of myself right now. I'm a little short tempered, or I'm a little, I'm just, right. I'm not smelling the roses along the way. Recognizing that, again, know thyself. Know thyself is about knowing what makes you a good person and what makes you happy, but also know your flaws. You recognize whenever you're messing up along the way and course correct. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that I'm fairly self-aware, and I don't know that I think in some regards I was born that way, but in other regards I've learned that, learned that trait of, like, look in the mirror, think about myself, recognize when my energy is not where it needs to be, how I'm showing up and how I'm being active on a daily basis isn't the right thing, whether that's, and it's a personal thing and a business thing. Yeah. So, I think it's trial by fire. So fail forward.
Tell me real quick. So you made mention 2 little kids and a wife, right? Tell me a little bit about your family, so we understand what it's all for.
Yeah. And all right. So there's a shorter version of this story I'm going to try to tell, because I can get long winded. Right. But when I was very little, I was really, really sick. I was in the hospital a lot. I spent a lot of time at Eggleston Hospital, which is ironically right down the street from my house now. But my parents didn't know, like, what was going on. I was just this really sick kid, had all these, like, lung issues. And my mom had a brother who passed away at 18 months of cystic fibrosis. So the doctors were like, he has CF. It's genetic or whatever. That's the problem here. And that's not a good thing for those of you guys that know. CF does, when I was 4 years old, when this first started happening, the life expectancy was like 20 to 22. So wasn't great. But then by the time I'm like 8 or 9, I, quote, grew out of it. And again, that's not a thing with CF. You don't grow out of it. It's a genetic disorder. But the doctors didn't really have much of an answer for it, other than the symptoms started subsiding and the issues started to go away. Well, then fast forward to when my wife, Michelle, got, trying to have kids, and we couldn't. So started doing some research, and the doctors were like, all right, look, I'm an open book. Vasectomy. Men have vasectomy, so they can't have kids anymore, right? Well, that's called the vas deferens, and they cut that. Well, that thing that they cut, I don't have that. I was not born with that. Interestingly enough, that's a gene mutation associated with CF. So the doctor started doing more research, and with genetic understanding that we now have today, they realized, wait a minute, you actually do have CF. You just have a different version of CF that we're only now starting to learn about. So I share that story with you to get to the question about family and how I view family. We had to have 8 rounds of IVF. I had to have 2 surgeries. My wife went through so much, for us to get our little boys here. Asa, who's our 6-year-old, will be 7 this month, and Finnegan just turned 4. Everybody loves their kids and thinks they're, but we obviously took a journey, very, emotional and physical and expensive journey to get those kids here. And anybody that's dealt with infertility knows what I'm talking about. I think, that's who I am. Like, that's how my family got to be. And I think, you got to learn to smell the roses on those kind of journeys too, because they're not always easy. Yeah.
And at the end of the day, that's what it's all for, right?
That's it.
All right. So here's what, let's move to business for a minute, because what I think is most impressive is the fact that you started over 3 years ago, and 3 years later, you're over 50 million, over what we'd call the millionaire real estate agent status. And you did that inside of 3 years. And I want to come back to that, but I want to use that as a perspective, because you had a life before that, right? And you started in real estate. You built up a really large team with a partner. Tell me a little bit about that journey. what you learned, who you became, all that, and then we'll parlay to what you got going today.
Yeah, I think that the story really begins with Rick Hale, actually. So
Okay.
Justin Seavey is my former business partner, and he had been talking to me for probably the better part of a year about this thing, because he was already at Keller Williams and he was aware of the model, the MREA model, and he kind of had the vision for that. But again, the independent broker, and I knew Keller Williams was like Kool-Aid, like that was my whole perception, right?
Yeah.
Window dressings, or limiting beliefs, right? And I just was pretty Justin and I knew each other for a long time, and I was fairly dismissive about the concept. And Justin finally said, "Listen, I want you to meet this guy, Rick Hale." And I'm like, okay, whatever. I'll go sit down with this guy. And Rick, we talked for like 3 hours in the training room, and he slides a copy of the MREA in front of me.
Yeah.
And starts to explain to me what that book was about. And that's where the light bulb went off above my head. And I thought, okay, this makes sense to me. This is a model. This is full of systems. I hadn't seen anything like that in real estate before. The entrepreneur mind in me started to really get excited. The engineering part of my brain started to get really excited, because I could see how to systematize things and structure things and organize things and track things. And so that's what really got me juiced. So Justin and I said, let's give this a run. It was me and him and Joan Sussin. We thought, hey, let's see how it goes. Now, I want everybody to keep in mind, this was fourth quarter of 12. So first quarter of 13, if anybody knows what was going on then, we were kind of right there at that launch point of the recovery. So we had the benefit of that. We had the benefit of being able to kind of learn what we were doing as the market was waking up and recovering. Our goal for that first year was to have one buyer's agent, for me to focus on listings, for Justin to focus on buyers, and then have one buyer's agent join the team and let Joan run our operations. Well, by the end of that first year, we had 3 buyer's agents, just because we were able to ramp. But it was really just, Gary talks a lot about don't try to be creative until you master the existing model. Yeah. So that's really what we were doing, was just let's implement the existing model. Let's follow it to the best that we can and just try to get things rocking and rolling. Yeah. And so we found some inspiration from other people that we would mastermind with. Justin spent some time with Mark Spain, and we borrowed some R&D, right? Rip off and duplicate.
Yeah, of course.
Right. We implemented things that we thought were good ideas along the way. And, 3 or 4 years later, we became the #1 team in the Southeast region, and just kind of looked up and like, wow, like, this works. Like, how did we get here? This, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah. But the nugget, like I'm listening to your story, of course, but I'm also listening for the success nuggets, right? And what I heard you say was this book was like your roadmap, and you hadn't seen that previously in real estate. And quite honestly, I'll go out on a limb and say I haven't seen it since either, right? Like there's not another roadmap to our industry still to this day that I'm aware of. But 2, you understood the power of models and systems. And you guys from day one, and I'm guessing that's a little bit of your success gift, Brian, is you're a model and system guy, no?
Absolutely.
Tell me a little bit more about that. Like, why is that so important to the path or trajectory of success?
Well, I'm going to misquote him, but I think Rick says it best. And he says something along the lines of, people like your clients, they don't care about working with me specifically, right? That's not actually what they care about. What they care about is that I'm providing them a standard of service that meets or exceeds my expectations. They trust that if I'm doing that, it doesn't matter if it's me or if it's somebody else. That's what they're really looking for. And so, I think that when you think about that, it's developing repeatable, replicatable processes that give clients the experience that you want them to have, that makes it a great transaction for them, a great experience for them, and they start sending you referrals and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. And then what I kind of learned then is growing a business like CNC, like any mega team, that value proposition must always exist. Those systems and models must always be focused on. And then you start building out system models for your team members, for the admin team, for the agent team, focusing on how you're creating experiences for them. It give them that, that world-class experience too. So, just simple things like, okay, if I'm going to have a listing, right? If I'm gonna market this thing well, I'm gonna drive traffic to it. You know, I've got to maybe do a coming soon thing, market that in a certain way, send out certain emails. I'm gonna do an open house on this day. We're gonna have balloons. We're gonna have sign-in sheets, digital, paper, whatever it may be. I mean, you guys get it. Like those of you that are practicing in real estate, you do the same things over and over and over again. It's getting super intentional about documenting that, figuring out how you can refine that, and then putting leverage in place so that you're not the person doing it. It's the team has their roles and responsibilities. And now you've got something that's not only replicatable, that delivers the perfect level of service that you want to deliver, but it's also scalable, right? Yeah. That's the moment where you have the hockey stick curve. You by yourself will never be able to keep up with a team. It's like saying, you know, I mean, you guys get that. It's the scalability that creates that hockey stick moment.
Yep. At the end of the day, if you do anything more than once, there's a system you could put in place, right? And it's just simply documenting it. And, you know, technology's really evolved too, in terms of these models and systems. How do you integrate technology into all this?
I mean, it's everywhere. It's everywhere all the time. I mean, you know,
it's just around us now, but at one point in time, it was a decision, right?
Yes, it was. You know, CRMs are vitally important. You know, Command, huge example of that, but just keeping up with your contacts. And then how do you create tools that can automate sending emails or handwritten note cards or postcards, or, you know, they automate your touch points, your 36 touch programs. Like those are the technology pieces. Being able to broadcast messages through, you know, email campaigns, social media campaigns, print materials, distribution channels, leads that come into your website, that come into your universe, being able to flow those into our CRM and route them out to team members, to have ISAs be able to have visibility to track that, documenting these. Like so we expect our leads to be called 6 times in 10 days. We expect 3 text messages to go out to them. We expect 2 emails to go out during that time frame. That's the standard. That's the expectation. That's documented. And then now having technology systems, CRMs, right, that can trigger those action plans, those smart plans that help automate that, and then have visibility into that system to where we know that this should happen. You know, is the person assigned to this doing what they're supposed to be doing, or are they not? Yeah, there's a lot of duct tape in technology these days. You know, you're just piecing together different pieces, whether it's a Word document or a Google Sheet or, you know, a CRM, getting it all to work together. I mean, that's what tech is for us.
So you throw a word in there, the expectation, right? So Ryan, the leader of CNC, right, sets an expectation and has a standard, and it's non-negotiable, right?
That's right.
So you're very clear. You said I expect the phone call to happen 6 times in 10 days, 3 text messages and 2 emails. And that's the standard and the expectation, and period. It's going to happen. Now let's go build a system through technology and people to ensure that it happens, right?
Yeah, there's a great quote. I don't know who gets credit for it, but inspect what you expect.
You get credit for it now.
Right. Well, I heard somebody else say it multiple times before me, but you need to inspect what you expect. And but before you can inspect it, what's the standard? What do you expect? And I'll shift gears slightly here in terms of, you know, I think early on in this, when I was just trying to learn how to make systems and create expectations and stuff, I think my leadership style was maybe a little more heavy-handed. And it's not because I'm a grumpy, aggressive kind of person. It's because it's the engineer in me likes things to be very black and white and non-emotional. I don't like to have emotional conversations about things for the most part, unless they're emotional topics, right? For me, business is not supposed to be emotional, right? It's black and white. Was A, B, and C done or not done? But early on, I learned, again, by failing, that having a firm and direct conversation about that doesn't really go over well with salespeople, which I am one of, by the way. Let's be very clear, right? Yeah. You know, I got feelings that they're very fragile, and I'm a snowflake like everybody, you know? Yeah. So what we like to do, what I have embraced now, is more of let's just have a conversation around this. Are we all on the same page that this makes sense, right? That standard that I just came up with, I didn't invent that. I got it from Anna Kruger. Samantha Williams and she's our director of lead generation. We took extensive training with her. Anna Kruger is the top ISA probably on the planet, certainly in the country. This is basically her model. It's a very close version of her model. But we talked about that with the team. We thought, look, we've got proof that this works. We think it makes a lot of sense. We think it'll work. What do you guys think? And, everybody's like, well, it's a little uncomfortable. It's a little aggressive, but we get it. Like, we'll buy in. And then we also say, not only do you buy in, but we want you to opt in. Right. So our philosophy is, if you want to claim leads, then this is what we expect for you to do. But if you just want the ISA team to handle the lead generation, the conversion on that, and then they assign back as an appointment to you with the ISA commission on it, that's okay too. And if you want to go in and out of that, you can do that. Just know that when you opt in, this is what we expect. And when you opt out, that's okay too. So, again, I think it is a little bit warmer and fuzzier. So that's an emotion, but at the same time, it's still pretty black and white. And I feel like it feels better to me. Those conversations become easier. And I think it feels better for the team as well.
Yeah. You sound a little bit like Tom Hanks in that movie, A League of Their Own. Like, there's no crying in baseball. I'm kidding.
Yeah. No, that's true. No, there's a lot of crying in real estate. There's a lot of crying in real estate.
Real estate's emotional.
It is.
It is. And at the end of the day, though, the more we can deal with numbers and business and standards unemotionally, the more productive the conversation is, because actually the emotion gets in the way of it being productive.
Yeah. Yeah.
Perfect.
No, and I think that's right. I think that our clients are the single largest financial transaction of their life. There's 6 figures at stake, sometimes in down payment money. There's certainly 6 figures at stake in terms of the purchase price. There's all these moving parts. And let's not forget, their life is transferring from one geographic location to another. That is a big, big deal. And so we have to honor that and respect it. And we have to try our hardest not to get sucked into that vortex of emotion, which is, it's impossible to prevent that from happening. Let's give ourselves grace, right? But the best that we can do to try to, experience it for a second and then detach again and be a fiduciary, be centered and non-emotional in it, that's when we can excel the highest. But at the end of the day, that's exhausting. That's a difficult thing that only people who have practiced real estate truly understand. Recognize that, and find that space again to kind of decompress from it. But anytime we can have business conversations that are less emotional, the better.
Yeah, of course. I always like asking the question, who'd you become along the journey? Because, a lot of times I'll do this interview with you and everybody sees highly successful Ryan Graham on this interview, and they don't realize all the trials and tribulations you took along the way to get here, right? And you're sharing a little bit of that with us, but in your introspective thought process, obviously, at some point in time, you were selling houses, and then you had to learn how to lead people, and then you had to learn the business side to be able to scale this thing. Who did Ryan become in this process?
I think I'm the same person I've always been, honestly. Okay. I think at a very early age, I did figure out who I was. Now, we all go through adolescence and try to be somebody else and things like that, right? And we certainly all fake it till we make it to some degree throughout our professional adult lives. But I think at my core, I've been pretty clear about what makes me tick and, who I am. But who I've become, how have I changed? I think in big ways. I've become more patient in business. I was not patient in business always. I think I've become more empathetic in business, and I have not always been that way. I think those are two people that know me personally and for a long time would probably say that I'm a pretty empathetic, sensitive guy. Like when we're having conversations, sitting by the water or something like that, right? But when it comes to business, that was not the case before. Again, it was the engineer in me wanting to be black and white, very to the point, and not want to have emotional conversations because I didn't feel like there was a place for that. I think what I became in business was, we're still people, right? Yeah. We're people having relationships with one another, working together. It matters. One of the philosophies that I implemented at CNC early on was that it was important to me. Of course, the pandemic wrecked this, right? But it was important to me that as a team, we got together on a regular frequency with one another and not business related. I mean, you got to have like the team building events and things like that. But not only did I want to know about people on an individual, but like bring a best friend, bring a spouse, bring a kid, bring a mom. I want to know more about who you are and what, again, why you're showing up. want us all to be best friends. That's not the goal here, right? But we need to understand each other at a human level so that, right, there's meaning to it. There's a little more.
Yeah, it's there. Back to the quantum leap conversation. It's back to understanding what makes us all tick and understanding the emotional part of who we are, that we come to work today. I bring that emotion with me, right? And you as my leader, understanding that helps me be my best.
Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. All right. So you built this MREA team, the Graham Seavey group, and then you went off and decided to do it all over again, right? So what I'm most curious of is you've done it twice, which there's not a lot of people that can say that, because most people don't do it twice within the same market. They usually like move across state and then they got to go start over in another market. So it's actually really impressive that you've done it twice. What did you learn? Like, what's the advice around this? Going from 0 to 50+ million in sales in a 3-year period is not an easy feat.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
What would be my advice? I mean, if you, the model is the model for a reason. You know, that the book was written almost 30 years ago or something like that, and not a whole lot has changed about it. And so that should resonate with everybody, right? Like, don't try to push outside of that. Do I follow the model to a T today? No, I don't. But I think I've earned license to be able to tweak things a little bit. And I still monkey things up, right? I'll still will goose stuff up from time to time. Like, let's get creative over here. And it doesn't work out. And I probably should have known better, but yeah, it's so
I want to peel that back a little bit. We use the term follow the model almost like it's a little bit of a catchphrase. What does follow the model mean to Ryan Graham?
I think it's a whole lot more linear than most people think.
Okay.
Right? You're not going to be, okay, those of you that are individual agents, right? Or maybe you've got like a couple of people that you're working with and you're trying to figure out how do we scale, how do we get to that next step. If you like read the MREA cover to cover, there's a lot in there, right? A lot. But, and I think it could be overwhelming. Like, how in the world am I going to implement all of this stuff? Like, how do I get there? I think if there is a line that you can draw through it, that just a kind of a step by step. I mean, there's that huge org chart type thing that's the 7 levels, right? And it starts out level 1, 2, 3, and the responsibilities. And if you went in the market center, it's like, it's bigger than both of us. If you go straight to the bottom and look at that, you're gonna get a headache. But if you look, you realize it is a line that you draw. You can follow that path and go right through it. So it's just, you do one thing, you implement another thing, you implement another thing, and there'll be some tangential stuff that comes along the way, but it's just one step at a time. That's it.
And not trying to skip a couple steps.
Correct.
Yeah. Or trying to read the last chapter to find out what happens.
Correct.
Right. We've seen it all. There's no shortcut to this, but it's certainly not as hard as some of us make it out to be either.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that maybe one of the bigger mistakes that I see people try to make is they try to maybe get out of production too fast, or they try to leverage off too much too fast. But what they say is, I want out of production. I want to get out of production, but they don't actually mean it. They don't take the time. All right. So yeah, you've got to take the time to document your systems, your process. You've got to take the time to help refine on that. And then you have to take the time to then train on that. I mean, you can't just say, all right, I expect listing manager, you to do these 14 things, go do it. And then, because most successful real estate agents have a lot of D in them, and it's just foot on the gas pedal and go, go, go. And then they get mad at the people they've left in their wake who didn't meet their expectations, and they never bothered to give them any sort of training or insight into that. So you've got to be patient. You've got to understand that in order to get people to be able to help you grow your business, you've got to do some things 3 times longer than it would normally take you to do it with them, and then be patient with them and allow them to mess up too. again, self-recognize that you screwed things up a lot before you got to where you are. So, let people that are working with you screw some things up too, because that's how they learn. But do it with them. Don't just say, here, go figure it out. At some point they do need to go figure it out. But I mean, you get what I'm saying, right? You need to be in a place of being a teacher, right? I believe that's how true leaders lead, is by teaching. My mom was an educator she's to this day still an educator, but she taught for 30 years in public schools and subbed for another 10 or 12 years after that. So there's a lot of her in me that wants to teach and educate.
Yeah.
That's really what training is all about.
Well, I think it goes back to that conversation. I saw Rick jumped on where Rick had told you that they don't want to hire you. They want to hire the standards you bring to the table or the service you bring to the table. If you're not teaching the people that work for you, how are you ever going to get them to deliver the standard or the service that you're expecting? I guess you could expect it, but it's going to be a really rough journey because people will let you down if you don't teach them or train them or coach them, right?
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah. So I think one of the, you asked a question a little like, who have I become over time? I think it took me a long time to accept that I actually do know what I'm talking about in this business. I think I'm a pretty humble person, but certainly in that regard, I just assumed that everything that I knew, that I learned through the years was fairly common sense, and that kind of everybody sort of got it. And that's dumb. Why I ever thought that, I don't know. But right, well, of course you do this for a listing, or of course you do this when you're representing a buyer. It's so obvious. It's not obvious. It's certainly not obvious to the general public, but it's definitely not obvious to people that are maybe newer to the business, or maybe just haven't been in a type of business that you're in. So being patient in that regard of no, let me help you understand how I'm thinking about it, right? And help in that regard. So
talk to me about people. Obviously, at your level, you have to succeed through others, right? What are the success traits you look for in people that you want to bring into your organization? What are the attributes that make them unique to your organization?
So I do this. I have an onboarding, or not an onboard, an interview kind of. I don't want to call it a spiel, but basically I just try to be as transparent about me and about the philosophy behind Community and Council, the philosophy in which I've used to approach this business since day one. And I just try to be as genuine and transparent, authentic to myself as I can in that moment. And I'll interject some questions along the way, looking for some responses. But at the end of this whole thing, I'll say to everybody, all right, I'm sitting over here and I'm ringing a bell. And if you can hear that bell, that's fantastic. That means we have more to talk about. But if you can't hear that bell, that's actually way better, because that means we have nothing to talk about. It is very, very, very important to me that we have resonance in how we're not the same. We're going to do our own versions of all of this, but at our core, there must be resonance between us, between our philosophy at CNC. Now, usually when I say that, I can see a glimmer in someone's eye where they're like, oh yeah, I hear the tuning fork. I know what you're talking about. Or the person's completely lost eye contact with me and they're like, who's this hippie? What is he talking about? And again, that's who I am. That's who I've always been. It's just now I'm far more, I guess, open about it or at peace with it, or I recognize how it attracts around my world, the types of people that work well. We work well together. And then all of a sudden we've got things to talk about. So are there specific skill sets that we look for? I mean, of course, a salesperson's got to be a salesperson. An admin's got to be an admin. You don't put a salesperson in a spreadsheet job. That's just dumb, right?
Yeah.
But that stuff I think is.
But I think great organizations have a DNA to who they are as a group of people, right? And there's usually a common thread, and you're using the term tuning fork or bell, right? Could you put it into words what you think that common thread or that DNA is?
Yes, I can. It's when I first got into the business, when I was in real estate school, we learned about the word fiduciary. The real estate license gives us the opportunity to be fiduciaries, gives us the choice to serve as a fiduciary to our clients. I always said, I'm never going to be a used car salesman. That just, right? There's nothing about that was appealing at all. But when I learned that word fiduciary, I thought, aha, that's it. That's it for me. I hold clients' interests above all other interests, and especially my own. That's how you practice this craft. And everything that I've done since has been predicated on that one idea. So that's at the core, and that's the word counsel and community and counsel. That's really where that word is kind of coming from, right? Is that we hold ourselves to the highest standard. We are the group, the small council of leaders, thought leaders within the industry, within the space, that we hold ourselves to the highest standard, and we lead by that, holding ourselves to that standard. The word community starts with the idea that businesses need to have communities inside of them, right? The people need to get along, they need to work well together. But there's a bigger thing to that, right? We work in real estate. It's neighborhoods, communities of people, right? It's families and schools and churches and all this stuff, right? That's a big part of our kind of our job and like what we talk about with our clients, but it's a big thing that we become a part of when we're actively involved in our communities. And we should be actively involved in our communities, right? It's a profit business for sure, but anytime we have an opportunity to give back through volunteer, we say this a lot. I'm going to take credit for this one. I say you have three ways that you can give in your life. You can either, you can open up your checkbook and give out some money. You can open up your calendar and give out some of your time, or you can open up your mouth and just advocate and spread some positivity. All three of those things are incredibly powerful things that everyone has the opportunity to do, any one of them. So that philosophy needs to resonate with people. It needs to make sense, because I believe, and here we go, we are one people on this planet. There's a greater consciousness. There's a greater being. There's like whatever you subscribe to, we all are marching to that same human drumbeat. And I think you need to recognize that in your life and in this world and in this life. And that's an important thing that you got to smile and nod your head at me whenever I'm saying that to you, if you're going to be on this team. Because if you're not, then that's fine. I don't care.
But it's part of who you guys are. It's your DNA, right?
We are. Yep.
Yeah.
That's it.
All right. So back to this 3-year journey, 0 to 51 million in 3 years. What'd you start with? Internet leads, database?
Okay, so this is where don't do what I did.
Okay.
I think a lot of people
That's why we're asking.
Right. A lot of people might mistake the answer to this question and try to do it. And I'm saying very specifically, look and recognize that this was the second MRE team that I built in less in a decade. So to answer the question, we came right out of the gate doing non-Mets and Mets simultaneously. Okay. That's because I knew how to generate non-Mets leads. I knew how to convert non-Met leads. I knew how to optimize return on investment through all these strategies. I knew how to implement technology to augment and automate a lot of these things. I knew from 6 years, of already doing it, how to get a good return on that investment. Therefore, I just replicated. And I also had existing lead sources and structures in place from the previous business. Like when Justin and I, we divided up at certain assets and, so I had a lot of stuff already in place. It was able for me to just launch with that. So if you're like me in that moment, by all means do that, but you probably aren't. This is maybe your first journey. Do not work on non-Mets until you've got Mets locked in. When you are working your sphere-based database, your past clients, your friends, your family, your neighbors, your community, right? When you've got that locked in and humming on all cylinders, then you go over to the non-Mets.
Yeah. Because you can lose a lot of money quick, right? If you don't know what you're doing. Tons. Okay. So give me maybe 2 pieces of advice around if I wanted to play in the non-Met world, what do I need to, what are Ryan Graham's success habits there? I think you already said one on having the expectation of the follow-up, right? Yeah.
I mean, the fortune's in the follow-up. It's without a doubt. You are going to, when you go into the non-Met space, you are now committing to, I need to generate 100 leads so that I'm going to get 1 deal, maybe 2. I might get 2, but it's really about 1 to 100. And you can't just buy 100 leads or produce 100 non-Mets leads and just wait for that 1 to come out of it. That's not how it works. You have to action upon all 100 of them in the same consistent, thoughtful, thorough way to produce that 1. And then when you get good at it, you might be able to turn it into more than 1, 2, or 3. But like the best of the best on the planet and non-Mets, maybe they're doing like 5 or 8% conversion, but most of us are doing somewhere between 1 and 3%.
Yeah. Which means 99 people say no, 1 says yes, and you got to have the guts so to go through the 99 no's, right?
Yes.
And the system to get there.
Yes.
All right. So, do you think you're an old school, an innovative, a traditional business? How would you describe your business?
I think that we practice real estate in an old school sort of way. You know, I think we recognize it still at the end of the day is a relationship-based business. Yeah. We are representing clients. We are being their fiduciaries. We're helping them with that massively important and massively large transaction. On the other side of it, though, I think we're incredibly innovative, not only in how we utilize technology and tools and systems and how we've tweaked the MRA model to be what it is for us today. I think our philosophical business approach is quite a bit different. I named Community Council for a very specific reason. I've told you like what the name means, where it came from, but I very consciously said it's not going to be Ryan Graham team. And it's not because I'm self-deprecating or anything like that, but the idea was kind of the big aha for me was I don't want this to be predicated on me. This needs to be greater than the sum of the parts. And then what that really actually evolved into was this recognition that the business is about creating a brand, an idea, a philosophy that then attracts people, but then create it as a platform then to elevate team members so that they can build their brands. We help them tell their stories. We help them identify with broadcasting that message and create a gravity around them individually. And it's funny, I was talking to Paul Scannell, who's in our office a few years ago about this big aha I had. I was so proud of myself thinking that this was like groundbreaking. He goes, it sounds like Keller Williams.
Yeah.
Thanks, Paul. Thanks. Because
got it. All right, Ryan, you're a smart guy. What's the future of real estate? Where's it going?
I think the future of real estate is I think that we're in for a stock market crash sometime in the next whatever year or two. We're ripe for a crash, and the stock market's due, not the housing market. I think that when that happens, the housing market will feel it when people's 401ks and their brokerage accounts drop by 10 or 20% or whatever it may be. Like, oh, I had 150 grand, I was going to use this as a down payment, but now I don't. Now it's, whatever, 110. Yeah. They're going to stop. Interest rates are going to start climbing in response to that. These sorts of things are going to create a pause. But I think those of you that were around in the business or otherwise, when the housing market crashed in 2007, it yanked down the stock market, right?
Yep.
But then it was the stock market that rallied and then over time started pulling the housing market, right? Because Wall Street got capital, became more and more capitalized. The investors came in and started consuming. And then, Wall Street came to Main Street and then consumers were able to start getting loans and slowly get out of it. I think the opposite is what's about to happen here in the near future, right? Stock market's going to take it on the chin. The housing market will feel it. That will create an opportunity for some more inventory to come in, for some interest rates to go up, a little bit of stabilization, a little bit of, I'm not going to call it it won't be normal, but normalization. And I believe the housing market will then rally the stock market out of that trench. I don't anticipate, us hurting like we did before. So this is not a doom and gloom. I do think though that people need to be mindful that they ought to be in a position where they can weather a short storm to where as things, start coming around, they're ripe in position to, again, take advantage of it and continue to thrive.
Yeah. What about this iBuyer scenario? Is it affecting your business? Are you embracing it? Is it a lead generation thing for you?
It's a place of consulting. I think Mark Spain is kind of the king of how do you leverage the iBuyer business, guaranteed offer, right? Yeah. Guaranteed home sale, those sorts of things. And I think that that's a great model. I mean, how many houses that guy sells, right? Yeah. We don't leverage it as a marketing thing. We do put the information out there to help educate how do I think it's, I mean, yeah, it's impacting the market. I think the more inventory of theirs that we see, and we've already seen open door listings at 2.5% buy side commission. That's no fun, right? People don't like, but we don't like that. Seattle saw that 5 years ago with Redfin. They saw a downwards pressure in commissions. And so I think we need to be prepared for, because Gary's been talking about that for years, prepared for maybe a depressing in some of the commissions because of it. I thought for sure that, well, my guess is that the iBuyers or the institutional real estate owners, the REITs out there, I guess if they're playing the long game, then they're going to own those houses indefinitely, right? Because that is a cash flow model that's going to exist. But it would make sense to me that if they're positioning themselves for a stock market crash, then that would be the time to liquidate their inventory so that they could push their capital laterally into the stock market so they can get the upside of that recovery. They've got the recovery from their housing market on this end. So, move the money sideways and go up that way. So that might be a moment where we start to see an influx of inventory. I don't know if that's smart or whatever, but
no, it works. It works. All right. So, tell me about like your journey and help us understand what like a great day looks like and what a bad day looks like in Ryan's world.
I mean, a great day is a day that I get to build Legos with my kids, or we get to go
and let them cut your hair.
I do. Let my boys cut my hair. That was a pretty good day. Those are the great days. A great day in business is you have these moments in business when you're all working together and sort of like everybody comes together in this like euphoric sort of like energetic moment of like, man, the market's kicking it. Lots of people have things under contract, lots of closings, and that's not a money thing. I mean, it is a money thing, but it's about, we're all feeling successful together. People are having wins. Somebody contacted them through the website because they like their profile, right? Their brand resonated with them and they want to work with them. A total stranger, right? You'll have these moments in business where people will, like, it just kind of happens for everybody all at once. And that's pretty euphoric and exciting. You hear people on the team say things like, I'm never going anywhere. That's a pretty great feeling. I mean, that's awesome. When you feel like, wow, people actually they want to stick around. That's awesome. I don't know. Bad day is anytime a lawyer calls me. That's never good.
We know that. All right. So Tim Cowan wrote in the chat, he said, what's the average days in the database on your non-met leads? I'm assuming he's saying like you get in a non-met lead, they go into your database. How long do they hang out there?
What's up, Tim Cowan? How are you, sir? I'm sorry about your Tigers, man. You guys are rebuilding, aren't you? Sorry, I'm a Georgia Tech fan. I'm bitter.
It's good.
What the average? I mean, I've got leads in the database that are 10 years old that all of a sudden resurface out of nowhere, right? There's I guess I ought to know that question, the average amount of time, but I would say the kind of that raw non-met lead, depending on where it comes from, I mean, it can take upwards of 2 years to convert. I would say anything that's like social based, so like Facebook ads or just sort of brand awareness type, looky-loo type non-met stuff. I mean, that's a 18-month plus turnaround time easily. Anything that's search driven, so a person actually went to Google or Bing or whatever, and they were like, I need to find a real estate agent, or asking questions about whatever. Those can typically be 3 to 9 months, so a bit quicker. Anything that's a portal based lead, and I'm not advocating for buying leads from Zillow, but if you are in that space, you'll notice that those people tend to be more hot. I would say comparing that to like stuff that's based on your reviews profile, anywhere where like a consumer's actively, or like your listings, any listings that you have, somebody's inquiring on that, like that's a very, very hot lead. Those can convert easily within 30 days.
Perfect. Christella said, do you have an MREA agent as a mentor when you started to form a team?
Rick Hale, I guess. He might not take credit for this, but I picked his brain a lot. So.
I texted him. I said, Rick, you're getting all kinds of props. You better jump on this call.
Here I am, baby. Thanks for the kindness.
Yeah.
I got another question here, Ryan. It says, you built a successful team twice now. What time was more difficult, stressful, time required, et cetera, and why?
The second time, easily the second time. And that might not.
I wouldn't have expected that answer.
No. And I'll tell you why. The first time, you don't know what you don't know, right? You're just kind of like flying by the seat of your pants and everything's exciting and it's new. And yeah, I messed up, I guess, a lot more the first go up, but it's kind of like, yeah, that was to be expected. You know, we'll try it and we'll figure it out. But yeah, you just don't know what you don't know. The second time, like I was saying before, I was trying to cram 6 years of growth and experience and knowledge into 6 months or less, which wasn't possible. But that's really, really stressful, you know, and I mean, let's be honest. Did I have something to prove to myself, to other people? Yeah. I mean, my wife asked me, like, there was late nights where like, are you going to do that? Like, are we going to do this? Or like, is this possible? Like, you seem so optimistic. Like, you're like, it's a foregone conclusion. This is going to work, but like, are you sure? I'm like, of course I'm sure. You know, but like
failure is not an option, right?
Yeah. Failure is not an option, but yeah. So I think there was a lot more pressure that I put on myself. There was a lot more like frustration. I joke with a lot of people. I know several entrepreneurs who start a lot of different businesses, right? I said, I remember the first time I designed a business card, real estate sign, like that stuff's exciting. Like you're like, oh, right. We designed a website. It's not exciting the second, third, or fourth time you've done it. So when it's not exciting, it's, you know, it can be more stressful. And in my case, it actually was. So
perfect. Well, Ryan, I want to be respectful of your time. We got 1 minute. Tell me your advice to us. You've been there, done that. You've done it twice now. What you've accomplished is second to none. It's utterly impressive. And I just want to tell you how thankful we are that you just took time out of your day to spend time with us today, just so we can learn some nuggets. I just want to share real quick before I get your advice. You know, what I'm listening for is kind of your success nuggets, right? And I heard that you're going to do whatever it takes. It certainly showed up in the valet, but I see it in your business. Like your commitment to the fiduciary speaks to the do whatever it takes, but it also became part of the DNA of who your organization is and the group of people that exist to be community and council, obviously all sing to that same tuning fork, right? And I know internet lead generation is kind of your stick, but you've also built a business on relationships first. But you understand if you're going to play in the internet lead generation world, the standards and expectations that are a must in order to get the return on investment. And I think that's a big success principle of yours as well. And then learning introspectively, not to be an ego hard ass all the time, and learn how to be empathetic and patient and not necessarily lose your identity, but learn the people side as you had to grow up in engage in people to build a great organization, right? So that's kind of what I heard in our interview today, and I hope I did it service. But I want to hear your advice for us, my friend.
Yeah, no, I mean, thank you. Thanks for having me. It's an honor. I'm very flattered. I mean that sincerely. It's I hope I'm a pretty humble guy, and I think that would be what I always say to people is stay humble. I think it's very easy in business and in life to have some wins and have some success and allow that to inflate your head. And that's okay. It's okay to be proud and it's okay to be excited with your success and all that kind of stuff. But it's important to stay humble. Yeah, I was chatting with Tim again. Thanks for being here. So Tim and I were in a mastermind group early on, and that was, you talked about mentorship. You don't have to necessarily find a highly successful MREA agent who's done it before you can mastermind with a group of your peers that you guys are all trying to learn together. We would, Tim and I, we would sit in this group. And there's about 5 of us with different teams from all around the metro area. And we would talk about our wins and our losses. We learned a lot from each other doing all of that. And that was a very invaluable time. I think, so again, staying humble, come from a place of curiosity, and then be a teacher. Like, I joke with people a lot and I say leadership isn't about knowing everything and just having a clear vision on the future. It's really just about being one step in front of the person behind you, right? It's just, okay, we're going to go this way. We're just going to kind of keep moving along this way. But yeah, it's being humble in that moment of like, I don't know it all. But I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to keep asking questions. Every one of you who've been in the business, the first client you worked with, you had no idea what, a due diligence period was, or what like radon was, or like lead-based paint, like what is this all about? And then your client would ask you like, oh no, that's a great question. You know what? I'm gonna do a little more research on that and I'll get back to you. You're like, what are they talking about? And then you go find the answer and then you go give them the answer. I mean, that's life, isn't it? Right. And that's what I think leadership is about. And that's what building things is about is, stay humble, stay in a place of curiosity, learn things, grow things, and then don't forget to turn around and teach those lessons to others.
Ryan, you're amazing. Thank you, my friend.
Thanks,
This one's
Brett.
for you.
All right.
Good to see you. Appreciate the contribution, my man. You rock.
It remains massively.
My pleasure. Anytime. I enjoy it.
Stay humble and stay hungry, man. Wake up every day, a hunter.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
There you go, sir.
All right. Bye, guys.